Welcome everybody. In this video we will go over the Gulped Lore sniper right here that does great in normal content, so against normal enemies, against elites, against bosses. That is also great in PvP. And so without further ado, let's get right into it. So per usual tradition, let's take a look at how the gun works, because while the devs have made a few mistakes, and well, I just want to clarify some things, right? So if we take a look at the weapons features, so hitting a weak spot grants a 80% chance to trigger Unstable Bomber when defeating an enemy, explosion range minus 10%, and damage plus 20% for 30 seconds, up to 5 stacks. And Unstable Bomber is guaranteed to deal crit damage with every 1% weak spot damage, Unstable Bomber damage plus 1%. Alright, so pretty much the special feature about this gun is that if you build weak spot damage, you will give damage to both your Unstable Bomber procs and to your normal bullet damage if you hit a weak spot, right? However, there is a mistake that the devs have made, which is in the last feature. As you can see, Unstable Bomber is guaranteed to deal crit damage. That is true, right? However, with every 1% weak spot damage, it's not Unstable Bomber damage plus 1%. It's crit damage plus 1%, right? So if I just pull out my gun, take a look here, you'll see that I currently have 273% weak spot damage, and if I scroll down here, it'll say crit damage bonus 273%. So it's not it doesn't go into the multiplier that gives your Unstable Bomber more damage. It goes into its crit damage multiplier. So with that, let's take a quick look at what Unstable Bomber does. So pretty much Unstable Bomber, it's instant damage and it's AoE, right? So it triggers one status damage blast of 100% PSI intensity. And pretty much PSI intensity, you get that from your gear, so make sure to calibrate your gear for as much PSI intensity possible. And the damage decays over the explosion distance down to a minimum of 50%. So this is really just the damage decay for the AoE effect, right? So the main target will still receive 100%, right? It's really just targets around it. And then the additional damage is blast, cannot crit. Now this is false for this gun. This gun, well, because of its special feature, it can crit. Cannot strike weak spots, that is true. And will not decay with resistance, that is true as well. And they give us the reduced version of the damage formula. So now that we know these two things, let's take a look at what calibration attributes we should be running. So currently, I'm running Rapid Shot Style, and that is what you should be running on this gun. This will allow you to skyrocket your DPS, right? So pretty much Rapid Shot Style, if you just shoot normally, actually I don't have a normal sniper, I think, but pretty much your reload speed is going to be much slower than what I'm doing right now, and you'll be shooting way slower, right? However, with Rapid Shot Style, what that allows you to do is to do this, right? So you can just shoot a lot of bullets in quick successions if you just do this trick where you shoot, zoom out, zoom in, shoot, zoom out, zoom in the OTS mode. So now for the substats of your calibration attributes, you're going to want to run double weak spot damage, and the reason for that is because, from the last weapon feature, because the weak spot damage will benefit your Unstable Bomber damage as well as your normal bullet damage. So you should go for weak spot damage bonus. Now let's take a look at our accessories that I'm running, right? So accessories, muzzle, run the large break, since you're gonna be using this gun most of the time in OTS mode, so you're gonna need that accuracy to be maxed out, right? Then optics, it's really more like to your choice. I don't think stability is a needed thing for the sniper, so really just anything that gives you more stability over range, like over at the cost of range, I wouldn't run it. I'm currently running the precision optic, which can be gotten for free, right? It gives me more range, and it gives me the zoom level, which I don't really care, right? So this is what I'll be running for the optic. Now for the tactic, it's gonna be the tactical laser sight. It gives me a lot of accuracy, and it also gives me aiming speed, right? And then for the magazine, it's the yellow mag. It gives you a lot of reload speed, which we'll need for this gun, and it also gives you mobility for some quality of life, right? Since both of them are pretty much free to get, just get the tactical SR mag, the yellow one. Now that we're done with the calibration attributes, let's go take a look at your gear and key gear that you'll want to run, right? So let's start with key gear. This gun is kind of special. You have like two options, right? So if you're gonna be pretty much shooting up close to your target, you'll want to use the explosive front top, right? Because pretty much what it does is, well, you don't really care about the delay. It's like, delays your damage like by 0.3 seconds. It's not like, it doesn't matter. But really, it'll give you the 30% unstable bomber damage bonus, right? So if you're going to be fighting up close, you use this. And the reason why I say fighting up close is because your other option is going to be the sleek leather jacket. So for every 1 meter unstable bomber is away from the player, unstable bomber final damage plus 2%. From the looks of it, this thing does not have, well, a distance cap, so you can go as far as your range will allow you to do. And well, as long as you shoot from 15 meters and away, right? This key gear will outperform the explosive top, right? So really just choose whichever, well, you'll be doing with your playstyle, right? Now, of course, explosive top costs 8k Starcrom if you directly buy it, whereas the sleek leather jacket is only 2k Starcrom. Now, for your gear set bonuses, you have pretty much kind of two choices in general. So the first one is 3-piece agent with 2-piece renegade or 2-piece savior, and you'll run this if you often kill enemies, right? So if you fight against multiple enemies, and the reason for that is because the 3-piece agent gives you a total of 45% weak spot damage bonus as long as you keep killing enemies, right? And now for your second option, or second combination of gear sets, it's pretty much going to be 3-piece renegade with either 2-piece agent or 2-piece savior right here. You'd run this if you often shoot at the same enemy, so against, like, for instance, a boss, and you don't change targets. And well, as a matter of fact, if like the boss just doesn't spawn aids, you'd run that, right? And the reason for this is because Archer's Focus, the 3-piece bonus of Renegade Hood, is going to be better, right? Since, well, increases weak spot damage by 4% up to 10 stacks, right? Like, if you don't kill enemies, you're just content with yourself with this. And if you do end up running this combination, do note that 2-piece savior is going to perform better than 2-piece agent set. Pretty much, first of all, their 2-piece buff is pretty much the same. However, savior set gives a bit more PSI intensity than agent set, which will make your unstable bomber damage, well, deal a bit more damage, right? So let's talk about the secondary weapon and the melee weapon real quick. So secondary weapon, run the bingo. It gives you pretty much when you shoot 3 times at an enemy's weak spot, it's going to give you weak spot damage plus 45% total, right? That is awesome for the Gulped Lore. That's exactly what you want for the Gulped Lore, right? And then the bingo will also apply Bullseye, and if you equip the vulnerability amplifier, your bingo is going to apply 16% of vulnerability to the enemy. And also, if you kill an enemy with the bingo, it's also going to give you 15% 15% buff for your attack, which is just awesome, right? This pairs pretty well with the Gulped Lore. Now, I'm not on a PvP server, so I don't really play PvP. But maybe, I don't know, maybe you don't want to run 2 snipers, because if the enemy is close range, you might be, well, in a pickle, right? Now, for the melee weapon, well, you can run the long axe. It's going to give you Fortress Warfare, which is going to give you 20% weapon damage bonus. However, you kind of don't really care about the crit rate, nor the melee swing speed, so yeah. This is pretty much going to be it for the secondary and melee weapons. And now let's go take a look at the substats priority. So you should be looking for precision suffix mods. So main substat will be weak spot, right? Pretty much every % damage bonus that is given from weak spot damage bonus, you can just double it for its value since it affects both your damage sources at an equal rate of 1-for-1, right? So every 1% weak spot damage will increase your weak spot damage and also your unstable bomber damage, right? Then you'd look for status damage and slash or weapon damage, right? These two will also buff your damage. Now, the caveat between status damage and weapon damage is that they don't really matter unless if you're shooting from afar. The further away you're shooting from, you will lose more weapon damage. However, your status damage, so like your unstable bomber damage, will stay the same, because as we've read previously, unstable bomber's damage does not decay with distance, right? Then for the damage bonus against X type of enemies, just content with whatever you have, right? In any case, in every single mod, there will always be at least one line that gives you damage bonus against X type of enemies, right? And also, sometimes for certain mods, right, just for one mod or whatever, with all of your substats added together, try to have a 12% ammo capacity so that you have 6 bullets per mag. And well, you gain a lot more damage from a certain mod that I'll talk about later. However, the next milestone for, well, even one more bullet in your mag will be 30% magazine capacity, and like it's just not worth it, right? Just don't go over 12%, right? And reload speed can be good for higher sustained damage if you continuously shoot at a target, due to it being able to maintain a mod's buff, one of the mod's buff, at its max stack constantly. But so for now, just remember that still, as I say, not everything I say about the mods is absolute, because mods are mods quality, right? Pretty much are very dependent on their substats, right? So you should consider some of the weaker mods that I'll suggest if their substats are way better than the best in slots, right? Also, if any time I mention X% amount of buffs and the math isn't mathing, it's because I'll be assuming that you have 6 ammo in your mag, right? So let's get right into it. So for the gun, you'll be running supercharged. So if you can take a look here. So triggering unstable bomber grants unstable bomber damage plus 5% for 3 seconds, affecting stack up to 6 times. Now this thing, the duration of the buff resets every time you trigger unstable bomber, right? So this will be pretty nice. Now, Reckless Bomber is just, it's not made for this gun. The Reckless Bomber is for the Jaws, which I've made a guide on. And I wouldn't really run Bombardier Souvenir myself. So really just go with Supercharged. And now let's take a look at your head mods. So pretty much, Precise Strike will be your best in slot because of it giving weak spot damage bonus from the main effect, right? You'll pretty much have, well, 12% weak spot damage bonus on your second shot, 24% on your third shot, 36% on your fourth shot, which remains if you shoot at an enemy until you reload your weapon, right? So this totals 144% weak spot damage bonus that you'll be benefiting from. And this is where if you have a lot of reload speed, right? And if you continue to shoot even after you reload, you'll be able to maintain this buff permanently at 36% weak spot damage bonus, which like essentially means a total of 72%, considering that like an extra 36% of that goes to your unstable bomber damage, right? And other than this mod, you can opt for Deviation Expert or Momentum Up. Now, Momentum Up is going to perform slightly worse than Deviation Expert, and Deviation Expert performs slightly worse than Precise Strike. And now let's go take a look at the mask mods. So for mask, you have 2 mods for UB, Unstable Bomber, and you have 1 mod that I'll talk about after those 2. But pretty much this is a Delay Blast is one of the UB mods. Don't run this. You will literally never be able to trigger the core effect because you don't have enough fire rate, right? Before the bomb explodes, for every 5 hits taken, the bomb's ultimate damage is 25%. It's impossible to do that on this sniper. So your second option for the Unstable Bomber will be Point Detonation. So when Unstable Bomber hits only one enemy, Unstable Bomber final damage plus 25%. And this synergizes well with one of the weapon's key feature, which is when defeating an enemy, your explosion range minus 10%. So pretty much this feature is going to allow this mod to perform, to be more consistent, right? And to perform better. Now, funnily enough, because this gun's, weak spot damage and unstable bomber damage both scale off of weak spot damage, you can consider running a weak spot damage boost if you don't have like the, where is it? Okay, so if you don't have point detonation, right? However, it will still be weaker than point detonation due to it not having 4 substat lines. You'll have less rolls on it. You literally have 1 single roll that you can go into. And also because point detonation adds in a new multiplicative variable in the damage formula since it's final damage bonus, right? So yeah, pretty much just, if you don't have the best in slot, definitely go for weak spot damage boost. Now, for your gloves. So the best option is going to be, well, it's to no one's surprise, it's going to be weak spot damage boost. It's literally like, so just from the core effect, it's 25% weak spot damage, and it's also 25% unstable bomber crit damage bonus, right? And so pretty much this will be your go-to. However, you only consider, say, munitions amplifier or elemental overload, right? Or even a status enhancement and elemental overload is pretty much the same thing. Only that status damage enhancement at 2% has 2% more from the core effect. But pretty much only go for these three. If you don't have a weak spot damage boost, or if your weak spot damage boost mod has like really bad substats to the point where the other options are just straight up better, right? Now for the shoe mod, covered advance, 20% buff for your weapon and for your unstable bomber damage. This is the best one. You can also consider Ferocious Charge, which every time you kill an enemy while being close to it, you'll gain like the buff, right? Slow and Steady as well, you can consider that, but don't fall below 90% HP. Secluded Strike if no enemies are around you, and the honorable mention here would be Ruthless Reaper Precision. So it's gonna give you, you're gonna have less damage. However, it's gonna be pretty good for AIDS clearing, since well, you probably already have enough damage to one-shot AIDS anyway, right? And you won't need to reload because of this mod's main effect, which is after getting 2 kills, refill 100% of your magazine from your reserve. So you run this if you're clearing AIDS. Now, for your top mod, once again, to no one's surprise, it's going to be weak spot damage boost, right? Pretty much without considering substats, you gain 15% weak spot damage and 15% unstable bomber damage, and no other mods here can compete with that damage buff. However, if we consider substats, munition amp right here and flame resonance, they pretty much could be better than your weak spot damage boost if they have much better substats, and your weak spot damage boost just has like, I don't know, say what, one defensive substat and like the other offensive one is gray, and when you roll the stat it goes into the defensive one, right? So yeah, that's it for the top mods. And now for the pants, as a reminder, assuming you have 6 ammo per mag, where is it? 3 strikes. Yeah, so 3 strikes will be pretty much my preferred ones, since it increases bullet damage and unstable bomber damage each by 30% for 3 shots, totaling at 180%, right? So I personally like this because I find it to be more consistent. However, you can definitively consider running Unstoppable, as it increases bullet damage and unstable bomber damage each by 30% for 6 shots, only if you are at least, well, 40 meters away, which is going to total at 360% damage bonus. However, if you're at like 20 meters, right, 20.1, whatever, it's going to have the same effect as 3 strikes, and if you are closer than 20 meters, this mod is useless. It's the buff isn't even going to activate itself, right? So this is like more conditional. You kind of have to set up for it, which makes me prefer 3 strikes more. And so everything else, so for instance, precision charge, do I have status simplification? Yes, status simplification, reload rampage, where is it? Reload rampage, etc. All of them are going to be much weaker than, well, these 2 options pretty much. Now let's take a look at the food buffs. So for the drinks, it's really easy. Whimsical drink. It's the only drink that's going to actually buff your damage, right? So used to gain 25% status damage bonus. And then for the food, you have quite a few options. You can choose to go for Shattered Bread, which gives you weapon damage 25%. However, it's not going to be the strongest one. Strongest one is going to be Assorted Canned Fruits, which gives you 25% weak spot damage when your sanity is above 80%. So this is 25% weak spot damage and 25% unstable bomber crit damage, right? Now, French fries, if you are able to get Fortress Warfare activated for you. Bone and Deviate Sausage if you fight bosses. Like these one are all like kind of worse than Assorted Canned Fruits, right? But they're like possible options again. Mixed fried hot dog if you use the bingo, right? Shellfish meat to give vulnerability. Like there's so many options, right? But I'm just gonna list you the few. The best one is this Assorted Canned Fruits. There's also like the fish buffs that you can get, but I really don't want to dive in it. Like getting fish is just such a hassle. I don't even want to touch that stuff. But yeah, pretty much these are going to be your food buffs, right? And now, lastly, for your deviation, you can run the Shattered Maiden, which when an auto attack, right, it's going to inflict slowdown and chain to non-boss enemies in front when attacking, which also increases their explosion damage received by 50%. So this will buff your unstable bomber damage against elites and against normal enemies. So this is an offensive deviation that you can use. So If you've enjoyed this guide on the Gulped Lore, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I greatly appreciate the support, and I'll see you in my next guide. Take care!